Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for our information session today. Hopefully this means you've already had a chance to look at the application, and we're going to be giving a broad overview with information and encourage you to look on our website for additional question and answer drop-in sessions coming up over the next few weeks before the application is due. My name is Sylvan Argo. I'm the grants manager with Lanel Foundation, and joining me today is Mike Dabrio, our Education Enrichment Director. And we also have other spectacular folk. Here on the call is Whitney Jones, our Grants Program Associate and Zoom Master Extraordinaire. And then also in support of our evaluation and learning is Dr. Kirsty Tyson. We have a number of other staff that you can always reach out to with questions pertaining to our different areas of work and focus and programs. So we encourage you to look on our website for additional staff in specific areas of interest. So the overview of today's call is really focusing in on these education enrichment grants. We'll have a little bit of how our grant making fits into our overall work here at the Lanel Foundation. We'll look at our theory of change. Mike will share more information about our focus areas and priorities for this particular grant cycle and funding. We'll talk a little bit about eligibility and indirect cost policy. We'll have notes for any current grantees that are applying in this cycle. We'll have more information regarding the timeline and the process itself. And then we'll share a little bit more about how our review and selection process takes place and how we look at applications. Because we're recording this, there won't be particular space for questions, but we do encourage you to reach out to us at grants@lanelfoundation.org with any application-specific challenges, access issues you might have. And then please do join us for upcoming Zoom sessions with deeper dives into our budget, into our focus areas, and any other questions you might have. So our grant making overview is grants are really a tool to support a spectrum of work and learning and programs that we take on here at the foundation. We're really excited about the education of landscape and all the things that you all are doing in our region. And our theory of change really looks at engaged communities. And we believe that along with outstanding school boards, educators, principals, and schools, that leads to improved learning opportunities and outcomes, which leads to whole child development, which leads to pathways to careers and thriving and engaged communities. We have many different programs in our different age areas, and we span the spectrum of early childhood to lifelong learners. This particular cycle focuses on the K through 12 education area, and Mike will share more about that in a minute. We do have many different programs and initiatives happening, and these grants in this cycle is just one piece of a larger continuum and spectrum of support and how we look to partner with you all around the region. We have direct funding via grants, and we also offer scholarships in support of higher education, both for recently graduated and continuing education. We have a strategic plan that if you go to that QR code for the Lanel Foundation strategic plan, we encourage you to really take a deeper look at any of our strategic areas and our initiatives. And this is a place to learn where we are mapping our work through 2022. And then beginning in 2022, we are going to begin developing our next strategic plan that will grow with all the learnings that we've had over these past couple of years. But really, as you're engaging with these focus areas and thinking about your work with regards to any of our focus areas, please do read the strategic plan to see more information on how we frame the particular areas of our work. And with that, I'll hand it off to Mike Dabrio to share more about our focus areas in this cycle.
Thank you, Sylvan, and welcome everyone to being immortalized in our recorded session on our 2021 Education Enrichment Grants. We're very excited for this year. We're doing some new things within our Education Enrichment Grants that are very, very exciting. And Sylvan will get more into the nuts and bolts of what that's going to look like. But a piece of that is sort of these different focus areas that we have. So our Education Enrichment Grants are should serve K-12 public school students for in and out of school time. So if you're program does not do that, you can reach out to us to see if there's some different things. But for our education enrichment grants, they should be serving K-12 public school students. So for our education enrichment grants, for these in 2021, we are doing 2-year grants. So these grants will go over be separated out into 2 years, $20,000 per year, and proposals should reflect that. And these proposals should really be thinking about systems change. That's really what we're trying to drive at within education in northern New Mexico in our region. And really trying to identify what are key things that need to change to move education forward. Now, when I say systems change, what I mean by that is that successful applications might not be one-off programs or one-off events. I say may not be because it doesn't mean we necessarily won't fund them, but we're really looking for things that are really going to get to the core of a problem and try to create generational shifts for systems that have been historically inequitable or haven't met students' needs in certain ways. So be thinking about that as we're going through these different focus areas that we have. These focus areas are just focus areas. I really want to name, this is what we're looking at as a foundation right now due to research, due to climate within the region. And there's a lot of overlap within all of them. And as we go through them, you're definitely going to see and understand that. But really, this is an effort to lift up your individual work. We aren't looking for a specific proposal. We want to know your thinking. Every time we go through the grants process, we're learning as well. So we don't have a specific program in mind that we're thinking of. It's what do you think is needed, and what are the things that you're driving through and want to do to grow your programs and change the system within northern New Mexico. So the 4 areas we have are college, career, and community pathways, whole child development, growing and supporting teachers and educational leaders, and STEAM. And I'm going to go into each one of those right now. Next slide. So the first one is growing and supporting teachers and educational leaders. This is really thinking about what are things that we can do that are professional development focused on maybe culturally responsive education or overall pedagogical approaches that you want to shift within a school or within a program. Now, this isn't all professional development. This is really professional development that's aimed towards teacher recruitment and retention, possibly, or towards growing those different pedagogical shifts that you're wanting to see within, say, a school site, a classroom, a school, a district, or within your nonprofit or programmatic actions. There's one of the big shifts and things that that we recommend you look at if you're thinking about teacher recruitment as a tool, which is very important, something we're focusing on, is one of our own reports that we published in the past year, and that can be found on our website and will be listed in our resources as well. Next slide. This next piece is STEAM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics, and which many of you probably know the Lano Foundation for. It's still one of the pieces that we focus on. And this is striving to support either K-12 students, educators, school leaders, districts in inquiry-based pedagogy or different STEAM initiatives that might be needed in different community contexts. We're really looking for proposals that for all of these incorporate some sort of culturally responsive or place-based pedagogy as you're trying to think through what are things that we want to support teachers with or we want to support students with, either in school or out of school time, keeping in mind community-based opportunities. This would also be an opportunity. STEAM is where professional development for teachers or staff or your staff at a nonprofit would be found. That wouldn't be included in any other piece. That you'd want to name that right here. Next slide. Our next piece is whole child development. Now, this has previously been identified as social and emotional learning. We've shifted this to whole child development. primarily because this is where applications that would be under this area are really focusing on non-Western academic focuses in a lot of ways. And included in that are pieces such as social and emotional learning or neurosequential learning, trauma-informed instruction practices, pieces that are trying to focus on nurturing the student beyond just math or reading. Successful applications here can include different student programming opportunities, educator and staff development. That includes teacher leaders, principals, superintendents, school boards, anything that's going to be going for that. For all of these, those would be eligible folks that programs that would be eligible under this. Again, we want to be thinking about those culturally responsive practices, being community-based, how pieces here might be building student or staff culture as we're coming back from COVID-19. What's that going to look like? We know that's on a lot of schools' minds. How are students going to reacclimate? How are teachers going to reacclimate? There's a lot of big questions there. So this is really a growing place for us to be learning within the foundation. And finally, we have college, career, and community pathways. This is a really exciting piece. It's very new for us, and we're really looking at addressing a lot of systemic inequities that may have existed or do exist within different programs. So thinking about improving career and technical education opportunities or career pathway opportunities in high schools. This could be professional development to district staff or school staff and understanding what college, career, and community pathways are. A lot of time this gets pigeonholed into high schools when really this can really be looked at as across the continuum from kindergarten up through seniors in high school, and thinking about what are opportunities within a community for kids who want to stay and grow and contribute back, and what are just the different how do we get students thinking about what they want to be when they grow up, which is I'm still asking myself that question. And then, of course, just other proposals that would be eligible under this would include increasing work-based learning and mentorship opportunities. So thinking about potentially internships, or if you have a specific career path that you want to have students be exposed to, that would be a great opportunity here as well. So so those are our big categories, and I just want to reemphasize, as you're thinking about all those, there is a lot of overlap. You may be doing something that's in college career pathways, but you're like, hey, this is whole child development, or vice versa, or there's STEAM and college career pathways. There's definitely going to be overlap. This isn't meant to be restricted, but rather focus a little bit and to help us as a foundation identify where you're at. But really, this is about, again, I would just want to reiterate, this is about your work and lifting that up. We want to be able to support you as much as possible in moving your initiatives forward. I'm going to turn it over to Sylvan, and she's going to go over the different eligibility requirements.
Thanks, Mike. And to echo along the lines of what Mike just shared as well, these are the way that we are framing it as a foundation, and we are a learning organization. And even as Mike shared, we've shifted the name even into whole child development more recently. So we really look to learn from you all, and we, in this sense, are not trying to be prescriptive and really trying to better understand your work. But we also welcome your thoughts and feedback regarding our strategic plan and regarding these focus areas. So we look forward to the continued conversation in that regard. And so when you are selecting your primary focus area, just go with whatever feels right or resonates the most, because there is a lot of overlap. And we do ask on the application for you to select any and all that apply in a series of checkboxes. So please do check any and all. And in many cases, you might check all boxes because you're doing something that overlaps with all different focus areas. And we're really excited to see how you and your work are lifting up any of these areas. Also, with regards to eligibility and the K-12 area, to clarify, this is for both in and out of school programs. And in that way, we support nonprofits, we support tribal Pueblo communities, we support districts and schools, and any of these entities can apply. And we would encourage you to just identify if there is a collaboration or a partnership, who is the best suited to apply and receive and manage the funds. There might be differences when it comes to budget and our indirect cost policy. And I want to encourage you to really look on the links that we have online and in the application itself to our indirect cost policy and to the budget template to just determine who might be best to apply if there are different types of entities coming together for the same program or project. We really do encourage collaborations. And Whitney, if you could go back to the last slide, I just want to make one more note as well. With regards to the different types of institutions, if you are not one of these entities and you do not have someone in your partnership or collaboration with regards to your work that is one of the entities that could apply directly on your program or partnership's behalf, then you would need to seek out a fiscal sponsor. And we do have a fiscal sponsor form. And I would just encourage you as well to look closely at the fiscal sponsor form and to look closely at the indirect cost policy, because there might be some budget pieces to consider when it comes to fiscal sponsorship and percentages and amounts allowed per different types of entities. The other piece here with eligibility is that these programs and projects and proposals must serve our 7-county region. So that is Los Alamos, Mora, Rio Arriba, San Miguel, Sandoval, Santa Fe, and or Taos. And within that, there are a number of tribal communities, pueblos, that we serve as well. There's more information on our website, and we do ask that you select where you're serving or where you're primarily serving in the application as best you can identify that. And we do ask for different communities served, whether they're Pueblo and tribal communities. We also ask for schools and districts served. And so as best you can map out and project who you're serving and where you're serving, please do select all that might apply, and then be clear about how you're serving or recruiting participants and beneficiaries, supporting beneficiaries from those particular geographical areas. With regards to our indirect cost policy, there is a QR code here. We are having a help session regarding our budget and indirect cost policy. So please do see our website for registration for that coming up in the next week or so. And we would encourage any and all of you to join us for that and take a look at the indirect cost policy, take a look at the budget template, and bring your specific questions to that. It's a drop-in session. So come as you can, leave as you need to once your questions are answered. With regard to the indirect cost policy, we have differentiated our board approved policy names that nonprofit organizations will be able to apply for up to 15% indirect cost in their budget. Pueblo and tribal communities can build in up to 20% indirect cost into their budgets. And then universities, colleges, schools, and districts do not get any indirect cost allowable in their budgets. So again, this can affect your planning if you have multiple program partners who might want to apply and how and who's managing the funds, and just recognizing the fiscal management and who will be the direct applicant for any of these proposals. So a note for current grantees. Many folks are looking to apply that might have recently received a grant. And by recently, it could have been any time in 2020 or our recent cycle for the outreach grants in 2021. For anyone who received a grant in 2020, everyone was given an automatic extension because of COVID and the challenges of this year to complete grant activities and submit a final report and budget expenditures through December of 2021. Everyone still has that in place. If you are applying for this current cycle and you have an outstanding report, you haven't completed your activities, you haven't fully spent your funding, we will need an interim report at least, or a final report. And those would be invited. So In this first stage for these proposals that are due in mid-June, no reports are needed for current grantees. We really are only going to ask for an interim report or a final report in August during the second stage, and we'll go over the timeline in a minute. But just know that this first stage, no reports are necessary, but you will be asked if you're invited to the second stage of proposals where you are in your spending. And that's really what that interim report is about, and ultimately what the final report is about. For 2021 outreach grant recipients, anyone who recently received one of the 74 grants in our most recent cycle, interim reports are not required because you are just receiving the funds at this moment. Let's go a little bit more into timeline. It is a two-stage competitive process. We ask you to submit proposals for a full $20,000 per year for 2 years, which will be a total of $40,000 over those 2 years. The grant awards will be dispersed in 2 separate checks of $20,000. So stage 1 application, we've just opened this last week, and we have some of these additional help sessions throughout these weeks leading up to June 18th, which is the first stage of this competitive application. This is the open call for any and all proposals and ideas by June 18th by 5 p.m. At that point, our review committee will begin reviewing proposals, and then in the very beginning of August, we will reach out to those that have been selected for the second stage, which is still competitive. We are going to be selecting a smaller group of applicants to submit a longer narrative and some additional pieces we'll share information on in a minute. And that will all take place in August. So really thinking through who needs to apply for this grant that will be available in the beginning of August to respond, if invited, to that second stage, because that second stage only has a few weeks turnaround. The beginning of August is when the invitations for that second stage will go out, or the notifications of declinations for those that have not made it to the second stage. And then there will be a few weeks to turn in, due in August, the additional materials. So think through who needs to be the point person and contact for this grant proposal, even in this first cycle that would be available at the beginning of August to respond to an invitation if selected. The award notifications will go out in late September. So everyone in that second stage will be notified whether they have successfully been awarded a grant or not. And then award funding and checks will begin going out in October. A few notes on this process. Really, we want to emphasize this is a competitive process, and we have amazing work happening around our region. There are so many of you doing deep work in all of these focus areas in all of our counties and communities. And it will be competitive. This first stage is an open call. The only additional documentation alongside the application piece itself is the budget. So this first round, due in June, asks for a broad overview description of what you're doing, where you're doing, how you're serving your community or school, and how you've prioritized that. And there is a budget narrative piece that asks how you've prioritized the grant funding for this particular proposal. The budget template itself is a template because at this stage, we're not wanting to see whole organizational budgets or even whole program budgets. We really just want to know, where will that $20,000 per year be spent if you receive it? What would you prioritize each year for that $20,000? And we have it broken out in a few different categories. And really just looking for flexibility. These are all general operations grants. There will be a lot more flexibility if awarded, but we just want to know your best projection and need for that funding at this particular time. Stage 2 is still competitive. A smaller group will be asked to submit longer proposals and supporting documents. At that time, if you are working in partnership with a school or a district or organization or a community, we ask for letters of support from different program or project partners. We will ask for more detailed program or timeline. And we will ask for a budget that does include more details about your organizational or overall project budget. There will be some eligibility documents required, and those differ depending upon the entity type. And please do look at our website for the different pieces. Ultimately, it will be some sort of tax documentation from any and all entity types. And then there might be some additional documents required depending on the entity type. For example, any nonprofit that is applying directly would need to be currently registered with the New Mexico State Attorney General's office. At that time in August, we would also ask for the interim or final report if you are a current grantee, just to update us on your spending for any current funds that you are holding. And to name an important piece in this is that we must receive all documents and all requested additional pieces by that deadline in August in order to remain eligible for the selection process for stage 2. So if there are pieces that you need to get together ahead of time or work with staff, then we encourage you to do so to be ready for that due date in August. We will award up to 20 grants at the end of stage 2. This is an investment of $800,000 in our region. We're really excited about this. These are 2-year grants for the first time in a competitive cycle, and our board recently approved adding additional funding to this cycle. So we're really thankful for this opportunity to support you in your work, and we really look forward to seeing what proposals you all bring. With regards to the review and selection process, it is a committee review. Each proposal will be read and scored by multiple people in both cycles, in both stages. So reviewers in this first cycle will look at clarity of program or project proposal. We'll look at clarity of budget and budget narrative, and then alignment with our strategic focus areas. So please do take time with the strategic plan. You can refer back to these slides and think through priorities for your budget, and as much as you can, clearly outline how you've prioritized the funding and where that need has come from and who has identified that need. Priority will be given to those that are in and serving our 7-county area. We do look to statewide initiatives, and we have funded many statewide initiatives in the past. We do need to see how this funding would support beneficiaries in the 7-county region. And we will give additional points through some of our scoring and rubric for those that are in and located in and serving our 7-county region. We also do give priority and additional points in our scoring process to those serving rural and tribal communities. And we know that much of our northern New Mexico region is rural, and we just want to recognize that there are differences in access to funds and resources in our region. So we just want to give that additional support to areas of northern New Mexico that might not have as much access to funding and support as others. When making these final award selections in stage 2, the committee will really endeavor to spread funding throughout our 7-county region and across all of our focus areas. So please note that some areas we might receive many applications from different types of entities and groups, and they might end up competing against each other in some ways, just because we are going to try to spread funding around our region. So just know that depending upon your focus area, the work you're doing, where you're doing your work, it might be a little more competitive than others, just depending upon your proposal itself. And we won't know how competitive that will be till we receive all proposals. And whether you receive a grant or not, we really want you to know that we recognize all of your work is important. We look forward to learn from any and all of you as we move forward, and look forward to continued conversations even beyond this grant cycle. And then with regard to this cycle, I just want to name that this is a 2-year grant cycle. There will be no education enrichment larger grant competitive cycle in 2022. We will be continuing with the 2nd year of these 20 grantees, and then we will open up again. The plan is to open up again in 2023 for another competitive cycle. So please note that this is a competitive 2-year cycle, and the next competitive cycle is in 2 years. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and we hope that you'll join us for future Zoom sessions. Please register via the website, follow us on social media for any latest updates for additional sessions as we add them. And we look forward to reading your proposals in June. So good luck with your proposal work, and thank you for all you're doing to support education and students and teachers and educational leaders in Northern New Mexico.